the members of this committee for joining us and being part of this very important work. And thank you to those of you in the public who have chosen to log on to this first meeting, September 30th, 2020, of the Ad Hoc Committee reviewing police policies. And just a little introduction about this format. We are using this remote format on Zoom in response to Governor Brown's Stay Home, Save Lives order. The format enables the city government, all of us, to do this work, to take care of business, to bring the community together while protecting the health and safety of members of the public, of staff, and of elected officials who are part of this session tonight. If you are logging on to review and you're wanting to understand how to watch this meeting, you can do so through the City of Eugene website. You can select under public, on the public webcast and meeting materials page, you'll see in the left side column of the police policy ad hoc committee there, and you can select that and you will find the Zoom link to join us there. So with that, I want to just formally open this meeting, and we are, I've thought about this committee. We have a lot invested in the work that you are about to do. And it seems to me that simply saying thank you for being here is actually not quite enough. It feels like an inadequate expression, given that you all on this committee, 30 of you, have volunteered your experience, your skills, your heart, and your very precious time to help us build a community and a police department and police policies that reflect our commitment to fairness, justice, and accountability. This is legacy work, and we all hope and expect that long after you have finished your work, our community will benefit from the deliberations and recommendations that you forge here in this series of meetings. This is a first, a broad coalition of voices that have for too long not been heard on these issues. As mayor, I welcome you, and I share this moment of welcoming and gratitude with our city manager, Sarah Maderi, and our council, two counselors, Counselor Jennifer Ye and Counselor Greg Evans, who put forward the proposal for this ad hoc committee. Together, we represent the leadership of this community, and we are united in our commitment to the work of this committee in bringing authentic change. Thank you. And with that, I will turn it over to City Manager Sarah Maderi.
I can't believe I started right off by the mute error. Thank you, Mayor, and I'm so thankful to see you here today, the whole group of you. And as I was scrolling through, I see some very familiar faces and some I haven't talked to in a long time, like Guadalupe, and a lot of new faces and hopefully new connections. I hope we can connect outside of this environment too, as I sort of enter into my city manager tenure here. Still feel very fresh to the role, though I've almost been in it a year. I was really a little bit timid about wanting to do an intro because I'm very conscious that this is a city council ad hoc committee and that you're working directly with them and reporting directly to them. But the work that you're doing and what you're going to share is so important to me, and it is so important to the overall city that I really wanted to just be here and be in your presence. I also I put a lot of investment into beginnings. I pay attention, like when something's starting for the first time, because we only get one time to start for the first time. And so this is a really special time. I'm really grateful to you. I'm here to listen and to learn from your experiences and then do something about that and understand how you've been impacted in ways that I can help make a better city. So thank you very much. I think I'm turning it over to the City Council.
Thanks, Sarah. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Jennifer Ye. I'm the counselor for Ward 4. And I proposed the motion that initiated this committee because I believe our community deserves a law enforcement system that understands the needs and it meets the needs of all of our residents. The committee's purpose is to bring forward the voices of our BIPOC and historically underrepresented communities in a way that creates dialogue that focuses on solutions. This is a place for us to have honest discussions, to ask hard questions, and to examine our assumptions. I know that being on this committee is a big ask, and like the mayor said, saying thank you isn't enough, but I'm very thankful for your willingness to share your experiences, your perspectives, skills, and your expertise so that council can have a more complete understanding of the needs of everyone that we serve. And now I'd like to pass it over to Councilor Evans.
Thank you, Councilor Ye. And two, I want to welcome you to this committee and say good evening. This is incredibly important work, and particularly for the BIPOC community. Our voices have not always been heard in these conversations and discussions about police procedure, training, tactics, and also hiring. We need to make comprehensive, full-on changes in the way that our police department approaches policing so that we can have an equitable and fair police force that is going to be able to relate to members of our city and our community that are not in the majority. We need to have change. It's happening around the country. George Floyd was not the first person who experienced police overzealousness and police brutality, quite frankly. And that's one of the things that we don't want to have happen here in Eugene. So please dive into this work. I want to thank you for volunteering to serve on this committee. A couple of you, I had to twist your arms, but you came along anyway. You know, thank you again for serving. And I hope to see a very robust and comprehensive product that comes out of this group and the recommendations that are needed to make substantive change.
All right. Thank you, Mayor, City Manager, and two of the city councilors. I see Councilor Zelenka has a comment.
Yeah, I too wanted to say that this is really important work and you will be listened to in this process. This is kind of a once in a lifetime kind of opportunity where everyone is focused on one thing, and that's police reform. That doesn't happen very often. So this is a unique time in our lives. And it's an opportunity for all of us that are doing this and all of you to really make a difference. And while I think we start where a lot of communities want to get to, I think we can do a lot better from where we are today. So I'm really eager to hear and learn hear what you have to say and learn from what you have to say. So thank you for participating, and I hope you all stick out through the slog of, what do we have, 17 million meetings over the next couple of weeks?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to be facilitating these meetings. And before I go through kind of a bigger introduction of myself and my two kind of teammates on this planning and facilitation, I wanted to just set the stage for what we're doing. And because I sometimes get nervous, I wrote it down, so I'm going to read it to you because I don't want to mess it up. I just want to take a couple of minutes to acknowledge the moment that we're in. The issues that this ad hoc committee is coming together to address are not new. In fact, they've been around since the founding of the United States, a country that was built on stolen land through genocide and chattel slavery. This country has a shameful history, and we must keep telling those stories so that they become part of the narrative and so that we don't repeat it. And while it's important to remember history, it is equally important to remember that we are also a country that has done some things right, and that many of those things came from community members, and that this is also part of our shared story. We still have so far to go, and we're lucky to have the collective wisdom of people like each of you to guide our next steps. The COVID-19 pandemic created an audience that was much wider than ever before. It created space for more people than ever, or maybe more people in leadership positions in the systems that make up our communities, to take a moment and to really think about state violence. The city of Eugene made a statement in June that acknowledged that the killings of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery were enabled by a culture of oppression and dehumanization that has deep roots in our society. In this statement, city leadership recognized that there is a history to be overcome and stated that they are dedicated to working together to do that. Additionally, they recognize that more can be done and change needs to be faster. The statement goes on to say that speeches and demonstrations are not enough, that as elected officials, they recognize the privilege they hold and their responsibility to use that privilege to end bigotry, discrimination, and systemic bias, and that there is a great deal more to do before communities of color and others who have been marginalized will truly feel protected and served by our law enforcement officers. The city believes that there is a need to look at policies through an equity lens with the goal of reforming city policies that continue with a legacy of racism. And leadership believes that one place that can start is with our police. And so here we are. I want to thank each of you for showing up today, for trusting the city of Eugene, and for trusting me to go down this road together. My hope is that at the end of all of this in January, we'll have a report that you can all live with, that the recommendations that are inside of that report will be seriously considered and that many will be implemented. I will commit to you that I will do my best to make these meetings productive, that I'll do my best to make sure that each of you have equal time and that your voices are heard. I ask that if you feel like I'm not doing a good job of that, or that there's something I could do to make your experience better, to please let me know. I'm always learning and I want to do the best for this process. And so let's jump in. I just want to take a minute to introduce myself, and then I'm going to ask two other folks to introduce themselves, and then you're all going to get a chance. So my name is Mo Young. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm the equity coordinator for Lane County. And I will be facilitating these 10 meetings, and I'm going to do my very best with 36 people on the line. And I'm going to ask Kevin to introduce himself.
Thanks, Mo. My name is Kevin Altucker. My pronouns are he, him, his. I grew up in Eugene, spent most of my life here, and I think probably my greatest accomplishment, if you will, is that my wife and I have raised two young men who have made a commitment to make this world a better place. So they're both doing their best to do that. I am the project lead for this ad hoc committee. I'll be mostly in the background, and my commitment is to serve you as best as possible. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me with questions or concerns, and I will do my best to follow up quickly and address those questions and or concerns. Thank you very much. I'll toss it over to Kaz.
Hi everyone, my name's Kaz Zaidi. I'm the Multicultural Liaison for the City of Eugene, which is a role that I've been in for a very busy 6 or 7 months now. As my pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm British born of Indian ancestry. I've been in the United States for 4 years, and my role would be supporting Kevin and supporting Mo, both in these meetings and outside them. So I'm sure you'll be getting a lot of emails from me, and I will do my best to reply to any emails that I receive from you or any phone calls or text messages as quickly as possible. Please see me as a point of contact. I'm here to help you. I'm here to serve, and I'm really, really looking forward to this process. I think this is important work, and I think there's very few places that are doing the kind of community-led work that we're doing here. I'm really excited to be part of this.
I'm already going to switch the order because I'm the facilitator. So I'm going to share my screen. I actually want you all to take just 1 minute to introduce yourselves. And I've got these questions that I would love for y'all to answer. And now I can't see the participant list, so that's going to be fun. I'll go down my list of checked folks. Anyways, just take 1 minute, and I'm not going to time you really close, but if you start talking for, 3 minutes, I'm going to stop you. To share your name, what organization or group you're here representing, what brought you here, and then one word about your hopes for this process. And we're going to start with Joshua Purvis.
Yeah, Josh Purvis here representing the NAACP with Brian Michaels. What brought me here? I was selected by the NAACP to serve after my current participation on the Legal Redress Committee, and also my work for City Club of Eugene, programming forums on poverty and criminal justice, including transparency, accountability, and reform of the police. And do you literally just want one word for the hope of the meeting?
I'll take 3.
Okay. I might do more, but I'll say subsequent. I would like to see a subsequent ad hoc committee with Lane County and the state of Oregon to discuss other criminal justice matters.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Michael.
Hi there, I'm Brian Michaels. I'm an attorney here in Eugene. And as Mr. Purvis said, I'm one of the 2 representatives of the NAACP. I've been with the NAACP for 5 or so years now. What brought me here? Well, I've been involved in police litigation quite a bit for quite a long time, including the Eugene Police. I'm rather familiar with a lot of the problems and ins and outs. In January, around January 11th, maybe 13th, Ibrahim, the president of the NAACP, and I wrote an op-ed about the murder, yes, the murder of the Latino homeless man in North Eugene, declaring that Eugene, without anybody noticing, has now entered the Ferguson Club. My hopes for this process, in one word, is accountability.
Thank you. David Saez.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Saez. I am the director at Centro Latinoamericano. And logistically, I guess what brought me here was Councilor Ye's reaching out to me about this committee and what interest I had in participating in it. What brought me here is that history has brought us here, and so it's past due time, and that's why I'm here. And the one word would be transformation.
Guadalupe Quinn.
Buenas tardes. I'm Guadalupe Quinn, and I'm on the board of Centro Latinoamericano, and I'm also part of the Immigrant Integration Network and part of Latinx, and I work with GLAD. What brought me here is just the situation we still find ourselves in. And I know a long history of work in this community, especially around the police department and other issues around policing and communities of color, and specifically what I know about the Latinx community, the immigrant community. So definitely interested, been waiting for some real change for more than 30 years. And so probably the word I have would be change. Change.
Thank you. Patricia Toledo, are you here? I don't think so. We'll come back to that if Patricia shows up. Dr. Betsy Davis.
Yeah, please don't call me doctor, just call me Betsy, please. I represent LULAC. I have indigenous ancestors. I have no Latinx ancestors, but Juan Carlos Salle talked me into being part of LULAC when it first started over the Racial Profiling Committee, sort of Lily Parker and I, we for 2 years, back when the police contact policy was being drafted, we spent 2 years trying to remove what I consider to be the white privilege in the policy, and found it completely daunting, disheartening, and morally injurious. It was a pain that you just can't describe. We obviously were not successful, and I keep thinking 13th, 14th, 15th Amendment, Civil Rights Act, and we're still here. So I guess the one word I hope, or it's two, white privilege, 3, white privilege removal from policy is what I hope we can achieve.
Thank you. Marty Wilder.
Hello, my name is Murray Wilder. I'm representing Transponder. I am myself a trans man, and so what brought me here is 2 things, actually. Representing the needs of the transgender and non-binary community, especially Black trans women who are most likely to experience police assault, physical or sexual. But also I am 10 years an educator here in Eugene 4J. I'm interested in issues having SROs in the buildings and educational justice for all of the students in the schools as well. And if I were to encapsulate my hopes, besides the outcome of the report itself, which may or may not come to fruition, my hope is for a coalition, a strong coalition.
Awesome. Thank you. Ems, I'm going to ask you to pronounce your last name for me, please.
That's Ems Avalos. My pronouns is she, her, hers. I am also part of Transponder. I am a board member and the T-BIPOC liaison for Transponder. So just throughout my work with Transponder, when we got invited, I just say yes. I will do it just because that's the type of change that I've been looking for, and opportunities to actually have a positive outcome through the city and also for our community. So the word that I will think of a little bit more of a metamorphosis and change.
Thank you. Rick Hamilton. You're still muted. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Rick Hamilton, and I represent Blacks in Government. I'm also a state police officer veteran for over 30 years. And I identify as he, him, and his. What brought me here is that I've always genuinely had an interest in the social aspects of people. I'm a people type person. The concerns that this group has been brought together for has been a concern of mine for well over 20 years, just been on the department. I can honestly say that I can look at this issue not only from the perspective of an officer, obviously, but also as a citizen. I have my own story. I've been on the other end of the stick, and I've been around the country a little bit, and I see a lot of things that many of you are not exposed to. And what my hope is that, for one, we develop some trust during this this journey that we're going on. There will be some true transparency, some humility, and also to focus on accountability. But I'll be the first one to admit that the problem that we're about to discuss and take on, I see it as an issue that we all have stakes in, and we all have things that we need to improve on. And this issue didn't start with the police just implementing themselves. And so there are a lot of different individuals and entities that have a part to play in not only the problem that has developed and manifested itself, but also in bringing about a solution.
Thank you. Quentin Reynolds.
Hi, my name is Quentin Reynolds. Thank you for having me. I'm representing Blacks in Government. What brought me to this, I was asked by Blacks in Government to be a part of it. My deeper commitment to it is that my son has a mental illness. So we've had vast dealings with law enforcement. And I just want to say for the record, the majority of them has been fantastic for them. That's not to put that out there to say that everything is perfect, but it's been a blessing. My biggest concern when dealing with this mental illness is that when he's out there on his own, will he come home? That's one of my greatest fears, because depending on the medication, depending on who he's interacting with, and depending on the interaction that he receives from law enforcement or cahoots, may trigger other concerns, which may result in a different outcome. So that's, as a father, and also I'm a pastor in the area. And so being a pastor, mental illness is huge. The crimes around our church in the area where we're at is huge. And if we can learn how to interact with those that are going through a lot better, I think there could be better outcomes, not just for them, but for those who don't understand the process, because it hurts being a parent, being a part of it, and seeing it on a daily basis. My hope is that as we're going through this, it's always been transparency, but also fairness and clear communication. I know you only wanted one, but those are the three things that really, touch my heart as being a part of this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Midas Well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Midas Well. I'm with Black Unity. I'm the protest coordinator over there. Being a part of a Black Lives Matter organization, it's pretty obvious the segue into being a part of this, but more personally, just taking a stand against police brutality. And then, of course, as the hot topic today is police brutality against people of color, it's something I feel very passionately about. And like was already mentioned, we do live in one of the, better places for all of this, but we still have a long ways to go. And so the opportunity to be a part of this process, and especially to be a young voice in this process, I think it's a very good opportunity. And in terms of what I would like to see, I just want to say effective change instead of ineffective change, instead of placeholder change. Thank you.
Thank you. Dee Dent.
Hi, my name is Dee. I'm representing Black Unity, and I'm sorry, can I say the questions again? I'm sorry.
Let me read them to you. It's the name, so you did your name and the organization, and then what brought you here, and share one or a handful of words about your hopes for the process.
Okay. Well, I'm here. Well, I'm from Black Unity, if that wasn't heard. And we've obviously been protesting and whatnot. I'm originally from Portland, Oregon, so I've seen heard of a lot of people that are close to me that have been, I can't talk right now. A lot of people near me have been victimized, and I feel like as a young African-American woman, I need to step up and make a change. And if nothing does come out of it, I do want to just get educated on police. I do want to get more educated on police. What's that thing called?
Policy?
Yes. Why can't I talk? Police policies. I'm sorry. That's it.
No worries.
Thank you.
Public meetings are weird to get used to. I appreciate you turning on your camera and talking. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm looking at our panelist list and I don't see Jason Mack's name, but I'm gonna say it just in case he's here. Nope. And David Tim, I don't see his name either.
David sent apologies to this meeting. It's his wife's birthday today.
I'm sorry to interrupt. This is Naya. I sent a message in the chat, but just in case you did not get it, I wanted you guys to all know that the mayor, city councilors, city manager, assistant city manager, and all other non-committee members are turning their cameras off to give you guys a space so the committee members can all see each other. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure you knew that they weren't turning off to be disrespectful or anything. Just wanted to let you know that some committee members asked for them to turn off their video. Thank you.
Thank you. Is Joel Eboa here? I don't think so. All right. Daniel Borson.
Hi, I'm Daniel Borson, he, him, his pronouns. I serve on the Human Rights Commission. I am a cis gay man and a Jewish man, so I hope to bring the perspectives of both of those communities, neither of which have organizational representation here. I think we have a precious opportunity here, and I hope that we make good use of it. I have 2 words. I'd say skeptically optimistic.
Thank you. Erica Lincongo. I think you're still muted.
Okay. Ajituta tukuya yuyung magta mashikuna. Shuhatu guya guta kachani kamiken Erika Linkango. Good afternoon, good evening. Please receive a greeting from me. My name is Erika Linkango. Buenas noches con todos. Mi nombre es Erika Linkango. Por favor, reciban una bienvenida de mi parte. I am an indigenous educator. I live in Eugene for almost 19 years. But instead of talking to me, I just want to quickly read something because, you know, I'm here because I'm bringing a message from a community. My elder is here with me, but I need to read this voice of my community.
Okay.
First of all, I want to acknowledge that we're standing not on my land, of your land. We're standing on the territories of the Kalapuya Nation. It is important for us to bring attention to the fact that America is not a land of immigrants. To say America is a land of immigrants erases the colonial violence at the foundation of the very system of colonial border creation, our police. If we reposition ourselves and think about police and migration, not as American citizens or as documented or undocumented, but as settlers who had built lives and identities on stolen indigenous lands, and often at the expense of indigenous peoples, then this conversation looks very different. This is a difficult truth to accept, hence the importance to emphasize our presence of Native American lands, not to suggest yet another round of violent displacement or expulsion on the current occupants, but as a way to reframe our conversations about the contemporary claims that US citizens make about belonging to and controlling these territories. In effect, unless we challenge the fundamental framework that undergirds the police debate and the immigration debate, we are participating in the war of settler colonialism that supports our current exclusionary policies. Today, by including indigenous peoples within this conversation and talking about indigenous peoples and indigenous sovereignty within this framework, seriously, we fundamental challenging not just the specific of our current system, but we are also completely reorienting our relationship to police, migration, these lands, and the obligation to share resources. We often think of the extension of the United States citizenship as a positive good and as the ultimate end goal for all people who wish to live permanently within what is currently the US. For many Native people, however, citizenship is another form of oppression and is perceived as the most recent version of ongoing colonial policies. It's just that in 1924, the federal government granted citizenship to all Native Americans living within the US borders. To be clear, many Native people saw this as a positive move, as it would give their children rights to public education, to vote, to hold titles, and to own their lands, to live and work outside reservations, and possibly to a path towards existing within a country that had for so many years sought to destroy Native people completely. Yet many other Native people, especially those who live within their own sovereign lands in independent territories, where they had fought long and hard to avoid removals and dispossession, understood this extension of citizenship as not only illegal, but also as a fundamental threat to Native sovereignty. In effect, while the US fervently denies citizenship to Chinese immigrants and to many Latino American families, it forced citizenship into Native American people in mass. Despite the apparent contradiction here, these policies can be understood as a part of the same larger project to build an exclusionary country. In response to this move, some Native peoples completely rejected United States citizenship, insisting that they could not simply be forced into the US without their consent. By pointing this out, we must also recognize that the narrative that insists that America is a nation of immigrants is dangerous, not only because it denies the deep-bound project of indigenous eradication and treaty violations to claim vacated Native lands, and thereby assert sovereignty over the lands that now compose the United States, but it also erases the experiences of hundreds of thousands of Native enslaved Africans who were dragged to this continent and brutally exploited. That said, as indigenous nations, we stand in solidarity with our migrants, brothers and sisters, because many of our parents and grandparents faces discrimination and marginalization because they spoke different languages, practiced diverse religion, and had skin, hair, or even clothes that marked as different. Just like many indigenous migrants and undocumented workers, our children have also been removed from our homes. Our sisters all go missing and go murdered. Many of them immigrants, many of them indigenous, many of them Black, many of them women of color, many of them who identify as non-binary, many women transgender, many of them lesbian, many of them bisexual. This understanding is important to us as members and leaders of the community, because it is on us to tell the truth and to recenter these narratives, because it is about time for us to understand that land and people of color bodies are not a territory to be conquered, exploited, or murdered. That said, my 2 words to share would be accountability and reparations. Thank you.
Thank you. Sandra Shotridge, you're next.
Okay, yep.
Hi, my name is Sandra Shotridge. I'm from Alaska. I'm Alaskan Native. I'm Tlingit. And my biggest concerns have to do with missing and murdered people of color. I'm going to expand on that. There's so many of us go missing and murdered without any follow-up. My father was killed in 1987. There was nothing was done at all. They got him stabbed to death. And here in the United States and Canada and all the Americas, particularly women go missing. And nothing's being done. That's my biggest concern.
And also 2 people of our community were murdered by police brutality in the last 2 years. Charlie Landeros, Eugene Police Department, Eriborio Rodriguez, Springfield Police Department. Nothing have been done. There is a lot of miscommunication, and we are hoping to hear what are the things that are going to be done regarding those recently cases. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, the one word. Finish cheese. That means thank you.
Thank you. Silverio Robert.
Hi, yes. Silverio, yes, I appreciate it. Silverio or Silver is fine. If you can't roll your R's. I'm here as a part of the Eugene Police Commission, and looking forward to the work that we're doing on this ad hoc committee. And since we're in Oregon, the one word that I would say, since change has already been taken and transformative, I'd say trailblazing.
Perfect, thank you. Macy Davis.
Hello, my name is Macy Davis. Pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am here representing the police commission, as well as myself, because I also have a lot of intersectionalities that are not being seen, especially by the police when it comes to the brutality of the BIPOC community. And the words that I can think of are accountability and effective change.
Thank you. Lindsay Foltz.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lindsay Foltz. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm here as the representative from the Civilian Review Board, where I'm currently the chair. That oversees the police auditor's work here in the city of Eugene. So I'm one of just a small handful of people who, because of Oregon public records law, have the opportunity to bear witness and see the complete investigative files, including body-worn cameras, et cetera, when it comes to specific allegations of police misconduct. I also serve as liaison to the police commission. Outside of that, just in general, I try to center my work, whether it's academic work or paid employment or volunteer work, on social justice, which I don't distinguish from environmental justice, just to be clear. And I sort of been carrying this idea that from Cornell West, that justice is what love looks like in public. So I'm here in love, like for you, for my community, for all the people that we're talking about, and to center the humanity of all the people that we're talking about in these meetings, right? Ourselves, I extend humanity to police officers, to everybody who is working on this. So love. I'm here because there's work to do, basically. And I wrote down the word change and then heard David say transformation and liked that word better. So thank you for that. And that's it.
Thank you. Rick Rosetta.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rick Rosetta. I practiced law in this community for over 45 years. Primarily, my work has been defending cases, so I've been on the other side of cases filed by Brian Michaels in the past. I'm here because I think that everyone having a voice in these issues is extremely important, and I'm here to listen and hope that it all coalesces into a situation where we find improvement. That's my word.
Thank you. Eve Hamide.
You are muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I am from the Muslim community in Eugene, and I'm also a human rights commissioner. So my hope, of course, is for human rights abuses to stop, even especially when they're coming from the folks that are supposed to protect us. So I'm hoping for a great dialogue from which we can come out with justice. I know that's lofty, but we have to start with big hopes and settle for the best we can get. And if nothing else, we'll have a great communal discussion about topics that are vital to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see this name on our list of panelists, but I'm gonna call them anyways in case I missed it. Abdul Rahman, I'm gonna mess up the last name, Isa? I don't think they're here tonight. Tana Nelson.
Hello, my name is Tana Nelson. I am representing the 15th Night. I am here to hopefully share the voice of many young people in our community. One of the Youth Action Council members that I get to work closely with is also a part of this group, so she'll get to share. My hope is that we wouldn't be afraid to hear what our young people have to say.
Thank you. Leticia Cerna.
Yeah, that's my name. It's Leticia. I am part of 15th Night, the YAC, or better known as the Youth Action Council with Tana Nelson. I am here, personally, I have Indigenous roots and I'm Mexican American, and I'm here to just kind of shine light for young people and also people of color, and as a woman as well, and, you know, kind of make change in the police interactions with us. And I guess in a few words, change and accountability is what I want to see.
Thank you. Marvin Revol.
Hi, my name is Marvin Revolve, and I'm here at the request of the mayor. I'm one of those guys that Greg had to twist his arm to be involved. I arrived in 1976 as a police officer in Springfield, Oregon. I retired after 20 years out of the Eugene Police Department, at which time I was the recruiting officer. I was also a police officer and the president of the NAACP during the Rodney King incident. And what I told a group of people at the University of Oregon at the time was that incident wouldn't happen here because the police officers in Eugene and Springfield and Lane County live in the community. Unlike large metropolitan communities where the police don't live and can't afford to live in the community. And so what you have is those people mentality. Those people, because they come in and they police in that community. When I became a police officer, the idea was the fact that my kids were raised with Mo. I was there when she was little. And so if you want to look at what's in the middle, the biracial children, my kids, Mo, my grandkids, they're already in the middle, already there. I'm currently one of the commissioners of the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. I have privilege. But when I left police work, I built a commercial insurance brokerage that became the largest African-American commercial insurance company in Oregon. And I fought racism from the majority community every day in order to do that. It's not just the police, people. It's the majority community. And without the majority community involvement in changing rules and policies, there is no change. The police don't make the rules. Once a cop, always a cop. Once a black man, I'm still a black man. And like Rick, I've been pulled over by the cops for driving while black. Okay? So this process to me is about equity. That's my one word.
Thank you. Leah Edelman.
Hi, I'm Leah Edelman. I was asked to be here as a representative from Temple Beth Israel and the Jewish community. And even more, what brings me here is my work and involvement in doing equity and inclusion work, and also my experience as a lesbian, as the parent of a Black son, as the wife of a deaf individual, and just our life experience of what it's like for them when they may encounter law enforcement of a variety of kinds. I guess when I think about what I hope, I've been thinking about a quote from DeRay McKesson, who said that sort of after violence, there's really not an opportunity for justice. The justice really comes in preventing that violence. And so I guess my hope is that that this is the beginning of really a process with a lot ongoing collaboration and inclusion that takes us down that long path to justice.
Thanks, Leah. Alaí Reyes Santos.
Hi, everybody. Good evening. Buenas noches. I'm really glad to be here. I'm Alaí Reyes Santos. I am here. I'm not here representing an organization. I was invited as a queer person of color to be in this space as a lesbian, as an Afro-descendant and indigenous woman, cisgender Latina from Puerto Rico. And also I'm a racial and environmental justice professor and consultant in the state of Oregon as well. So I bring that training and experience here too. My keywords are witnessing, integrity, and healing. Respect for the public process, no behind doors conversations or decision-making. That's the beauty of all these public spaces, is that we get to have these conversations publicly and have everybody be able to watch us and engage. And I think that that's really important for us to actually get to that healing place in our community and for real change. I'm also trained as a traditional healer, holding spaces for hard conversations in my community. And I see this as a place where I get to witness and hold that space to keep us all having the hard conversations in a healing and loving way as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Justin Meyer.
So my name is Justin Meyers. I'm not here representing any specific organization. A group of people, we call ourselves ADOS, American Descendants of Slavery, put together we had a rally just kind of helping put some things into perspective. I was asked by the mayor to kind of sit on this committee. My main heart to be here is I have 3 Black sons here. I have a daughter here. I grew up here, experienced a lot of racism. As Martin said earlier, we're looking at a community issue as a whole. This is a majority problem. And so, but I think those who are in positions of power, like the police, I think this is a great place to start and address that issue. So that's why I'm here. My words would be reform and then accountability for that reform.
All right. Did I miss any of the committee members? We're gonna jump in now that we kind of know 2 minutes worth of information about one another. So, like I said, I switched the order, so my my co-conspirators, Kevin and Kaz, are hopefully not too mad at me, but we're gonna jump into this this information that we decided late today should be in slide format so you could read it, so that if you wanted it later, we could send it. Just want to be, I guess none of our, I didn't catch at least any of our intro statements talking about the wording of the motion that was made by City Council. I don't have it with me, but what I can tell you is what's on the screen. So the work of this ad hoc committee, according to the motion that was made by the Eugene City Council, is that it's grounded in Campaign Zero and the President's Report on 21st Century Policing. So those are the two foundational documents that this group needs to focus on. And so based on these documents, we came up with proposed content for each of the 9 remaining meetings. And you saw this in an email, and this isn't a final draft, this is a proposal. So if you have, if you wish that you would have seen something on this, now is a great time to share that. If you think we don't need to talk about something and we should talk about something different, that's, or if you love it, either way. So we're just gonna do 5 meetings at a time. This first one is the one that we're doing, so we can't change that. And the next one is next week. And that's going to be on community representation and oversight. But moving forward, these are the things Kaz went through both of those foundational documents and found the places where they were similar and the places where they weren't, and came up with this. So right now the proposal is that the 3rd meeting looks at independent investigation and prosecution and fair police union contracts. The 4th meeting would look at end broken windows and for-profit policing. And the 5th meeting would look at alternate response models like Cahoots or others. I'm gonna go through all 10 and then I'm gonna go back to the beginning. So the 6th would be looking at training existing officers as well as new recruits. The 7th would look at body and dash cams, incident recording and accountability. The 8th would look at demilitarization, use of force, and crowd control. The 9th would be supplemental. It's an extra meeting for items brought up that fall outside of the charge that's given by council. So that might be culture shift, that might be practice shift. It could all sorts of things. It could be things that you want, sent up to the legislators. And then the 10th meeting would be staff, would be Kevin and Kaz bringing forward the draft report for you all to see and talk about. So I'm gonna go back. I see that there's chats and I really can't open the chat box. Silverio?
I expressed concern that strangleholds or chokeholds are not on the agenda, and I'd like that to be the focus of our 9th meeting.
You want that to be the focus of the night? Could it fit under meeting number 8?
So use of force, demilitarization are going to take a lot of time.
Okay.
And I definitely feel that it requires some more attention than what that would give us.
Does anyone else have?
Mo?
Yes.
He's right. The issue that we're going to look at when we're looking at things like a chokehold or any other type of, we need to, if we're going to get involved in that, first off, demilitarizing the law enforcement has been an ongoing effort by the federal government. As we end different wars around the country, we then dump that equipment on the police departments throughout America. If we're going to look at that, we need to look at what the city council and the majority community is going to do around standard policies and procedures, which come out of the state. So even, and believe me, I used the chokehold for various reasons. If we're going to look at those types of issues, we're going to need to force the governor to take a position that she's not been willing to do, as well as the legislature. So if we get into that conversation, we need to bring in what the city council is prepared to do as far as taking information to our local representatives, the state senators and state representatives, in order to change standard operating procedures that the police can and cannot use.
Well, that fits right. That fits real nicely in meeting number 9. Then.
Brian Michaels here.
Go ahead.
I think the issue of escalation and de-escalation needs to be addressed out in the field. Believe it or not, there's a lot more escalation than de-escalation than people might realize. I also think when we discuss about review committees, the issue of subpoena power and transparency of records from those subpoenas needs to be addressed. And I have a question about when we review a draft report, and I'm not trying to throw monkeys into the wheel here, but for example, if people on this committee do not agree with parts of the draft report, will those disagreements be included in the draft report?
I'm going to let Kevin and Kaz address that because I don't have a good answer for you.
Kevin, I'm happy to jump in on this one. So we're very much in the initial discussion stages. What we envision in terms of what the report will look like is that it will have separate sections for everything that is under the jurisdiction of the city council, under the jurisdiction of the county, the state, and at the federal level, as well as things that might need to form part of collective bargaining with the police union. So we're going to divide all of those things up, and once we're, the final meeting is about this committee being able to look at the report and to discuss it. It's hard to say at this stage precisely what it looked like, but I think we want to reflect the opinions of the committee as a whole. And we do anticipate that there'll be a lot of differences of opinion. We want to record everything that is said. We're not interested in creating a single voice if there is a multiplicity of voices. So I hope that's helpful.
I don't have anything to add to that. Thank you, Kaz.
Okay. Did that answer your question well enough, Brian?
Yeah, I guess as we move forward, it will become more clear as we get closer to the details. But I just wanted to raise it ahead of time so it doesn't get missed. But also about subpoena power for review commissions and a discussion of escalation versus de-escalation, I think would be two very important topics to discuss under those sections.
I'm writing down everything and we'll see where we're at.
I think Marty shared something in chat as well. Would you be happy to share that with the committee by voice, Marty?
Sure. So, I'm hesitant to handpick what issues I think I want to add to a list or focus on. I feel like any one of these items we could spend a lot more time on than every other week having a 2-hour meeting about it. And I'm concerned that with all of our best intentions, we're going to find ourselves in too short of a compressed amount of time to really do any real work. So the two things that have concerned me were, one, are we limited to just these 20 hours, 2 of which we're using right now just for introductions? Can we meet in between? How many people forms a quorum? If I want to talk to someone else on the committee about an issue in between, when do we really get to dig in and read all the documentation we need to look at and really think about this as a community? So one of them was that, can we meet in between? And the other one was, should we take some time in the beginning to talk about all the issues in a way that we can prioritize and talk about from each community's perspective what really hits home and what we might want to focus on, maybe a smaller amount so that we can spend more time on it.
So there are two questions. One is about, do we have enough time to do this work? We'll get to the can we have, well, that's not true. The other piece of that is, can we have closed work sessions in between meetings? We will talk about public records and public meetings a little bit later. I've got to, if you would like me to fast forward to that slide, I'm happy to. So I cannot answer the closed work sessions in between meetings. My guess is there's somebody that works for the city that can do that, that's on this call. And I guess what I would say about the first piece of that is, 9 2-hour meetings is what we were given to do this work. And so if this committee does, I guess my hope is that we'll do a good job at doing as much as we can, and we'll try our best to get through all of the things that are in those 2 foundational documents. And if we can't, then I think that's something that has to go to council. And as someone who doesn't work for the city, feel free to tell me that I'm wrong, city staff.
I'm a little bit unclear about if this says ad hoc committee on police policy, and the other one said there will be a report produced. What is exactly our job? I mean, these documents, the President's Committee and the Zero Campaign, they're beautiful words. But what I found is that when you try to take those and overlay them into policy, it's sort of behind the scenes, and it can get translated into, if for lack of a better term, the social construction of police policy. And so I'm just not sure what our job is. What are we going to actually be able to do to impact policy? Is it indirectly or is it directly?
Does any, I'm looking at you, Kaz and Kevin and Nia. Does anyone have the exact language from council that could be shared?
Yeah, Mo, I emailed that to you. You should have that in your email box.
I will open my email. I close it when I'm sharing my screen because you don't want to see all the emails I get.
Sorry, Mo, if Naya or Jeremy could make Catherine Brotherton a panelist. She's the city attorney and will be able to answer some of these questions.
He's there.
Yes, I have just been made a panelist. I can speak to the question about subcommittees if you'd like that answered right now, if that would be helpful. Subcommittees are, you can absolutely have subcommittees. The question would become whether or not they're subject to public meetings law. And it really depends on what the charge is of the subcommittee. So it's not necessarily a quorum of the ad hoc committee that necessarily dictates whether or not it's subject to public meetings law. So if, for example, the subcommittee is tasked with coming back and making a recommendation to the committee as a whole, that is subject to public meetings law. So the answer is it depends whether or not whatever groups are getting together are subject to public meetings law. Whether or not, just folks get together and talk about stuff outside the meetings and they don't have a specific task and they're not reporting back, that's when quorum does matter. So if less than 50% of you want to get together and just chat and you're just sharing different thoughts and it's not towards working towards a decision or a recommendation of the body, that wouldn't be subject to public meetings law. And that's kind of obtuse. I apologize for that. So if there's specific things that you want to ask about forming subcommittees, I can advise specifically on whether that would be subject to public meetings law.
Thank you for that. I'm gonna share my screen again because I have managed to get the language of the motion for you all. Thank you, Kevin. So I put in bold the parts that I think are extra relevant, not that all of it's not relevant, but the motion was to create an ad hoc council committee to review current police policies that are related to Campaign Zero's outlined policy solutions and the President's Task Force on 21st Century Policing, and prepare and submit a report to council that recommends policy changes to current police policy.
Yes, I got that in an email. I believe it's an attachment. But it sort of doesn't give a, when you make recommendations for policy change, sometimes there is not coming back to that recommendation group to show how the changes or to give the rationale why it wasn't changed. It sometimes the recommending group can be left in the dark until the policy is developed and it's already approved and it's done, and then nothing changes. So I just was curious, what does this, is there anything after that report with recommendations on change? So we could know if our changes were actually heeded, and if not, why?
Right, that makes sense. As someone, again, who is not sure, because I don't work for the city, I would recommend that in your report, you ask for follow-up at whatever intervals you think is appropriate.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, Mo, the recommendation report can include requests for follow-up.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey Mo, so I don't know if you see the chat, but I think one thing that is important is that a lot of these, the documentation we're looking at, right, is based on it's very broad. It's looking at a lot of different areas. It's kind of a federal approach, right? I think one of the things we really need to consider is that we're looking at this in the context specifically of EPD, correct? And not any other policing agency. And so what specific issues are within EPD and things that we are making recommendations for changing. Otherwise, we're going to sit here and we could talk about thousands of issues because we know that there's thousands of issues, and we can waste 10, 12 meetings. And honestly, we can waste more than that. And so I think the direction of context, what specifically are we addressing within EPD? Because that's where we need to be talking about. This is the community that we're concerned with. This is where our immediate attention should be going. And so I think really just kind of honing in that focus is going to be really important. Otherwise, we're going to sit here and have great conversation and accomplish nothing.
I saw a lot of very enthusiastic head nods and some thumbs ups to your comment, Justin. I'm keeping an eye on the time, and here is my recommendation. You can tell me it's terrible or we can move forward with it. What if we go through, I have written down 3 different things that folks have suggested. If there are others that you want to suggest, we can write those down too. And I would love to come back to the next meeting with an updated list of proposed content. I also would like to know if there are things that you see on this proposed content that you don't think we need to talk about.
Mo, just very quickly, and sorry to cut across you, Lindsay and Daniel Borson have had their hands raised for a little while. Speaking to what you just said as well, we've put this series of proposals out there for comment. And if members feel that it would be useful, I'd be very happy to put together a little prioritization exercise that we can try and complete via email over the next few days before the next meeting. so that we can hone in on some of the most important issues. So I believe it was Daniel and Lindsay that had their hand up.
Sorry about that. Daniel?
No worries.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could add recruitment to the meeting 6 as well as training. That one of my concerns is the well-documented infiltration of white supremacists and white nationalists in police departments across the country. And I have also heard Chief Skinner say that the important thing is getting the right people in, and I'm curious around the policies relating to that, that unless you have the right people in, no amount of training is going to make much difference in change. Not to add to our workload, but it seems to me to be a very important point.
Yeah. Thank you. And Lindsay?
So I have a question, one question and then a comment. So the question is, on the first meeting when it talks about community representation and oversight, what do you mean by community representation? Do you mean within the police department? Do you mean within oversight processes? What do you mean? What are you signaling there?
So I'll take this one, Mo. That's a direct lift from, I think it was Campaign Zero. And
so you're using it in their context?
In their context.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that helps me, thank you. My other comment is that demilitarization and use of force deserve more space and can't be handled in one meeting. I think there are other things that maybe if we're going from what you've proposed to us to sort of respond to, I think there are other things that could be consolidated, but de-escalation, for example, I think should be part of, if we're going to talk about use of force, we need to also talk about de-escalation, and as has been astutely pointed out, it's not explicitly called out, but that will also require even more time. So I like your idea of a prioritization exercise, and if we can cleverly come up with a way to figure out how we allot time in that prioritization exercise, I think that would be really good. So for example, I can say, like, there is information that I think would be useful for people to have about how we administer body-worn cameras and how we retain that footage and what kind of schedules those are on and what people think about that. But that seems like a much smaller topic than demilitarization of police and use of force. Like, that's a microscopic issue compared to those two other things. So I heartily endorse the idea of some kind of way for everybody to be able to prioritize what we spend time on and how much time we spend on each thing. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you. Rick, Rosetta?
Yes, thank you. Since the charge that we have in the motion is related to how we are making recommendations to change police policy, I think it would be wise for everyone to be kind of assigned some homework, more homework, to read the particular portion of the police policy before every meeting as it relates to the particular issue that we're going to be discussing. And the policy can be found at the EPD website. Just look at the policy and read it. That way you'll have an idea what changes you might want to propose, and we can focus a little bit rather than talk about what the nation needs to do or what the county needs to do or what the state needs to do, because we're dealing with a city issue here. And the city council has charged us with a duty of dealing with the policy in our charter and what governs the police in Eugene. And I think if we get focused on what happens across the country, we're going to lose sight of what we're supposed to do.
Thank you. I see 3 more hands up. I see you, Ali. I'm noticing the time, and we have a little bit more to get through. So I'm gonna, if we can be quick, I'll call on more than 3. Might as well. You're muted.
Sorry.
No worries.
I think most of what I just said was just said right before me. I just think it's really important. I'm hearing a lot of ideas and a lot of proposals coming up, and I think individually we need to figure out what is actually realistic for this group to talk about and for this group to cover. And then as a group, I agree that we should really prioritize that. Because like I said, it seems like we've got 10 months worth of ideas coming up in this conversation, and we can't do all of that. And so we need to actually focus on things that we can do for this city council, like you said, not statewide, not countrywide, as much as we would love to. Just seconding that. Thank you.
Thank you. Silverio?
Yeah, hi. So I do read police policy. I'm on the police commission. We have a lot of discussions around some of these things that we're going to be focusing on. What we are not discussing is strangleholds or chokeholds. And I really feel that that merits some discussion from this ad hoc committee.
Ali, and then Rick Hamilton.
Yes, I like the idea of doing homework before the meeting, so we are warmed up and very specific about Eugene. And I just want to say that though at times I can see the value of having closed meetings for this kind of work, and I've seen and participated in that kind of process, I would really want to know exactly what the purpose is if we do closed meetings or like subgroups, and the intentionality and community agreements around that. I want us to be careful. This is a very delicate, sensitive issue, very close to many of our hearts, I think, super close to our hearts. And so I think, and we're living in a really divisive and polarized political environment. And for me, I would want to do everything possible to make sure that any conversations we have and suggestions we have come out of this group together, and that we have the fact that we have people watching us and people have access to these meetings. I feel like it keeps us also in check as committee members to act with integrity in this space too, and with each other. So that's just my 2 cents about the idea of having some work outside. I would want to be really intentional about how we do that if we were to do that. To be caring about the work that we're doing and to be for the long run.
Rick?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
What police work, law enforcement, period, it's a people occupation. And the complaints that people have, I mean, you can talk about weapons, you can talk about custody techniques, violence, you can talk about all that stuff, but it's about social interaction. There's no communication, there's no relationship between officers and the public. And whether you're getting good service or not, there's no relationship there. So there's no understanding, and law enforcement in general never really, they never really become transparent and open to the public. And there's very seldom is there time for, well, put it the time allotted for officers to explain what they're exercising out there in the public, whether it's on a traffic stop or coming to a house or whatever. The problem is communication. The problem is relationship, because we're talking about people. And most of the complaints are because people, whether you are a different ethnic group, whether you're male or female, whether you're of a different religious persuasion, it's about respect. People want to feel like they're being treated fairly. They want to feel like you're treated like a person, like you're just like anyone else. And a lot of times, this is the issue. This is the sour, nasty taste that is left in a person's mouth when they're done processed during an event involving a police officer. And different agencies do it differently. different agencies focus on it more than others. And what I hear and see, and I've been, like I said, I've been around here for 30 years, and I've seen it. I've seen some of the things that the people of Eugene complain about. And a lot of times people don't really understand police work. And so we automatically want to go to these quick fixes and come up with a new law or a new policy. But I'm telling you, you have to force our industry to communicate with you as the public, because we are serving you. And a lot of agencies, they don't do that. They dictate and they dance to their own music, and they get away with it time and time again. I can sit and talk about all kinds of things that I see in your city regarding how your officers relate to you that I've said for years should change. Things that are public service oriented, and you're not getting it. Yet and still, there are very few of you who really take the time out to pick apart the policies that are that your agency is governed by. And so you don't fully understand what they're doing out there and why they're doing it. And it's a communication issue. It's an understanding issue. And that should be the first and foremost before you even consider changing a policy. You got to find out if these guys are even abiding by their own policies and who's holding the officers accountable. And you know, and I'm not tooting the horn of the state police or anything, but that's one of the things that most of the officers in our department hate, is that we're held accountable, but also because the agency itself is held accountable by someone above the superintendent. And a lot of times in a lot of these metropolitan areas, it's a different environment. And I'm saying, if you really look at your interaction with these officers and their accountability on how they treat you on these contacts, you will find that this is where you can gain some compliance and you can gain some respect, and you have a different respect for your officers. And I think that's where you need to focus at. Because like I said, this is the thing involving people, it's involving how you think, your mental status, and what you feel like after that contact is broken, whether you like the action that was taken or not, and yet you still respect that officer or not. And these are the kind of things that you really need to focus on.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I'm sorry that I have to interrupt you in the sake of time. Yeah. I apologize. Thank you for sharing. We have got to move on.
That's the problem, though.
Right, and we certainly will talk about accountability. I think that's a good point. I'm gonna call on Silverio, and then we're gonna move on to the next. I'm gonna try to, before we move on, say what I think our plan is moving forward, and then we'll move on.
Thank you. I move that we have strangleholds and chokeholds on the 9th discussion.
Does anybody want to second that? We haven't even talked
I think
about
we should wait until we come up with a better list of everything we do want to focus on, because everything's might get moved around a lot more than that.
And also, just to clarify, are we using Robert's rules? Is that what we're doing? So a first, a second discussion, and then a vote? Is that our process?
I should have done this part last. Loosely, yeah.
So I'd be willing to have it part of a broader discussion, but I definitely want it on our calendar.
Yeah.
So let me tell you what I think we're doing, Silverio, and then you tell me if that works. I wrote down that we need to talk about recruitment, strangleholds and chokeholds, escalation and de-escalation, subpoenas for review commissions, and transparency. And that those things would need to be added to these existing proposed content, and that Kaz will then send a survey. Yep, exactly, Marty, you're quick. So Kaz will add those to the survey where he asks for prioritization from this group. The other thing that I heard asked for is that, or I didn't hear it, I read it in the comments, that there's a discussion about the survey results at the beginning of the next meeting so that you all can be on the same page. I'm going to ask Silver if that addresses his concern, and then I'm going to call on you, Sandra, okay?
Yeah, without the specific language, stranglehold, chokehold, armbar, it doesn't address the concern.
I thought I said stranglehold and chokeholds. What would you like it to say?
The specific language, strangleholds, chokeholds, arm bars.
Arm bars. Got it. I'm learning about police policy as we go, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, the arm bar is the maneuver that killed Eric Garner in New York, and it was also banned by the Los Angeles Police Department in 1982. So I don't think it's something that is going to be a huge issue for us to look at.
Okay. Sandra?
I have a concern that hasn't been brought up. In Sitka, Alaska, we had an 18-year-old kid, young man, that had been on his knees and had his hands cuffed behind his back. And he had 4 or 5 officers beating on him and tasing him. Come to find out that the had been charged with assault himself in the previous job. But there's no record of it that our police department had.
Sandra, I'm sorry, can you please speak closer to the microphone? We cannot hear you.
In Sitka, Alaska, there was an 18-year-old young man. Can you hear me now? An 18-year-old young man who had been handcuffed, and he was on his knees, had his hands cuffed behind his back. He was tased and beaten up really bad. And come to find out that one of the police officers had done a lot of assaults like that before in previous jobs in a different state. And I wanted to make sure that anybody that's hired and has a background check.
There's I don't know the right word for that, but there is a word about, because there are background checks, and then there are things that are sometimes not included on those, and I will find out what the word is, and it will be on the survey.
Especially in cases of domestic violence and sexual assaults.
Well, we've been told at the police commission that is the phrase is extensive background checks.
Thank you.
I think that would be covered under recruitment, but I can put it in as a specific subcategory of recruitment to ensure that it gets the airtime that it needs.
Okay. Justin, does this feel really important?
No, just a quick question. Can you, or either you or Cass, speak to the level of authority based on the recommendations that we're making? You know, I would hate, I think everything is important, but I want to make sure that we're not making recommendations towards specific issues that it will have no bearing towards. Does that make sense? So who is affecting change when it comes to specific policy or hiring, and then the effectiveness of our recommendations? Does that make sense?
It does, absolutely. Mo, I can speak to that, or you can, as you prefer.
I would love it if you would, because.
So there's a comment from Councillor Zelenka in the chat, which I think addresses this. It will be a report to council. And then insofar as council has jurisdiction, the city of Eugene has jurisdiction, it will be up to councillors. That will be a separate process engaging with councillors that the community will need to engage in once the report is published. To lobby or push for one particular recommendation over another. Where we don't have jurisdiction, we will make those things very clear, and then again we will let you know who has jurisdiction. It may be the state representatives, it may be our federal representatives, but that is something that's outside of our purview. All we can do is take down the recommendations of this committee, outline them as clearly as possible, and then send them to the relevant authorities. After that, it's really about the extent to which the community chooses to organize around any particular issue to lobby the relevant authority.
Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna move us on. We have 17 minutes, but I'm confident that we can do this. So the next thing, we created some group agreements that are based on the group agreements that the Lane County Equity and Access Advisory Board uses. I wanted to share that with you all. We'll probably ask for you to approve them or amend them next time, just in the interest of time. I'll read them out loud. So the agreements are, in no particular order: maintain awareness of our power differentials. Community members will get priority. City councilors are here to listen, learn, and ask questions. Share time and contribute proportionally. And I'll do my very best during the meetings to check in with folks who haven't had the opportunity to speak yet a couple of times. Share your own experience and default to confidentiality with other people's experiences. Listen actively and fully. Avoid generalizing and assumptions. Remember that both intent and impact matter. Value dissenting opinions. Maintain the goal of dialogue, not debate. Be curious and practice accountability with one another. And we'll send those out to you all, along with the links that were shared in the chat box, and whatever other follow-up you get. And we'll chat about them at the next meeting. So if you have additions or things that you think should not be on there, you'll have a chance to share that. See here, now we're going to talk about making decisions. So the recommendation that Kaz and Kevin and I came up with is that we'll use a loose interpretation of Robert's Rules of Order. So when a decision is to be made, we'll ask for a motion and a second, and then we'll hold a vote. The reasoning behind that was so that we could get really clear ideas of what the motions are to put into the report. And while we will aim for a consensus, motions will pass with a simple majority of those in attendance. So 51% of those in attendance. We'll do our best to get to everyone, but knowing that there are so many of you on the call, we don't want that to hold it up. And then just for your information, quorum will be consistent with public records law. And so in this case, that's 16 out of 30 members of the committee. Does that sound reasonable? We'll send out minutes in advance of each meeting to ensure an accurate record of the decisions made in the preceding meeting exists for you and for the community. Anything that you want all of your colleagues on the committee to know, we ask that you send it to the staff. So send that to Kaz or Kevin or myself. And we will make sure that it gets sent along with the meeting packet so that all of your inboxes don't get just overflowed. And information requests coming from this committee will be limited to 1 hour of staff time per request. And that's a rule that the city of Eugene uses with, sorry, I'm trying to make sure that the chat box is not for me. So I apologize. That's a rule that the city of Eugene and the city council uses. A stipend will be paid for time spent in these meetings at the equivalent of $15 an hour. We will take roll just based on like the participants. Leticia, we know you're here, even though it says Tanya. If a member is unable to attend a full meeting, they'll be paid for the nearest hour, calculated in 15-minute increments. And folks will be paid in full at the end of January 2021. And then I'm gonna just read this to you, and if you have questions about it's 3 different slides, so bear with me. But this is the public meeting protocols and public records law piece, so it's pretty important. Public meeting law applies whenever a quorum of the ad hoc committee is present and members of the committee are discussing public business, which is any policy or administrative matter that pertain to the local government. A quorum is generally 50% of the members plus one, so 16 of you. A quorum of committee members meeting either in person or virtually to discuss public business is the most straightforward example of when public meetings law applies, but you will also want to think about other instances where a quorum of the committee might be discussing public business, like email exchanges and social media correspondence. These types of discussions by a quorum of the committee would also be considered public meetings, and you would need to comply with public meeting law. Lastly, once an item has been placed on the agenda and deliberations are occurring towards a decision, sequential one-on-one discussions in person, on the phone, or by email may constitute a meeting for which public notice and access are required. For all of the city's facilitated ad hoc committee meetings, the city will be taking care of complying with public meetings law by providing notice of the meeting, simultaneously streaming the meeting to the public, and recording the meeting so it can be accessed by the public in the future. And then I added to this little asterisk on the bottom. It's important to know that the chat function on Zoom is also a public record, and that includes private chats. So just for you all to know that that's something that we have to post as well. And I'm going to stop sharing because I can't see who's all here, but Catherine Brotherton is here. She's the lawyer for the city, and she, if you have questions about public meeting law, could answer these questions for you.
Looks like you covered it, which is great.
Good job with your paragraph. Thank you. Maybe that's all right. We did it. So the next steps for this group is that you'll get a doodle poll for the subsequent meetings. So we haven't identified what exactly the topics will be, but we will identify the dates because this group has to be done with this iteration of its work by the 31st of January next year. So there'll be a doodle poll, and we'll do our very best to get as many of you at each meeting as possible. A survey, Kaz will create a survey to help you prioritize what you want to talk about at each meeting, and then also included on that survey will be the items that you listed off. I'm going to read them again, and if I missed something, I would love for you to tell me. So extensive background checks for officers, especially those coming from other states, relationship building with community and law enforcement, recruitment along with trainings, strangleholds, chokeholds, and arm bars, escalation and de-escalation, subpoenas for review, commissions, and transparency. Did I miss anything? Okay. I can't see all of you at once, so I'm trying to scroll through. And then as you're thinking about the things that you want to talk about and you're doing the survey, I ask that you think about what which are the content areas that you're going to want to hear from city staff from or about, so that we can start getting whichever the meeting is on folks' calendars. So if you want to hear about use of force, you probably want to hear from the person who was in charge of that program. So just things like that. But just bear in mind that this is just about city staff and not, county or state or, beyond. And then the next meeting is next Tuesday, and that's going to be focused on, I'm going back, hold on. I want to get the words right. Community representation and oversight. And so you will hear from the police auditor and the police commission, as well as the folks who are sitting with you on this ad hoc committee who sit on both of those bodies. In addition to that, I'm going to make sure that we add this discussion about the survey results and the group agreements. I think we did it.
If I can just add to that final point, after this first meeting, after the second meeting rather, we're going to have basically a 2-week gap between each meeting. So we'll be able to take a lot more input. We had to make some decisions about who we thought you would want to see in this meeting. And I think given the setup that we have, we felt that it was important to have members who were also members of the Police Commission and the Civilian Review Board have the opportunity to share their expertise. So this is not how we're going to be proceeding. Further into the future, there'll be a lot more say. But in this first meeting, in this second meeting, we have leaned in on having the police auditor and the Civilian Review Board involved. So I just wanted to share that with you, that going forward, there'll be a lot more say. I think that it's probable that those are people that everyone would want to hear from, given that we have this structure in Eugene. But yeah, we will have more time in the future to be able to take care of the precise content of each meeting.
All right. I want to thank you all for your patience with me as your facilitator. This is a big group. And I'm excited to work with you all and get us to a point where we're talking about the things that you really want to talk about. So I want to thank you. And I'm going to ask, let's see, maybe Kaz and Kevin to say thank you also.
And there are a couple more comments in the chat before you guys close out.
A link to the police union contract, we'll find one. I assume there is.
We'll get hold of that information for you as soon as we can and try and send it out with the packet for either this meeting or the next one, if possible.
Rick, did you want the communication skills and capabilities added to the survey? Sorry, what was that?
Yes.
Okay.
I just think we're missing something here, and maybe it needs to be explained better. But it's crucial. It's very crucial.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'll leave it to Kevin, who's leading the process, to go last. I want to thank everyone for participating. Please don't hesitate to contact me or any of my facilitators. We are going to do our best to get you information in a timely manner to turn things around as quick as we can. But I do ask you to bear with us because, as I've indicated in the chat, some of the things that are asked for have multiple different areas of responsibility. We need to speak to 4 or 5 different departments within the city and possibly other agencies as well. With that said, we're going to do the best we possibly can, and I will be available pretty much all the time during this process to help facilitate these conversations.
Thank you, Kaz, and thank you, Mo, for your facilitation. Thank you, committee members and folks who are listening in on this first very important meeting. I think the group did a great job of zeroing in on the charge that the committee has, and that is to focus on Eugene police policy and make recommendations to the city council. And of course, there are many other policies and issues that are near and dear to many of our hearts, and I think it's important, if we want to fulfill the responsibilities that the city council has given the committee, that we maintain our focus on Eugene police policies, and with a firm kind of hand on the bodies of literature contained within Campaign Zero and 21st Century Policing. With that, I thank you all. I hope the rest of your evenings are wonderful, and we will look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday night at 6 o'clock. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.